Hi everyone, I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope everyone is enjoying their Saturday afternoon. It is July 27th, 2024. And the power problems there in Texas, in the Houston area, they continue to grow. I was reading an article that said CenterPoint went big on seldom used mobile generators. $800 million later, it needed smaller ones. Jason Wells' home in Houston lost power for 2 days thanks to Hurricane Beryl. But the CenterPoint CEO didn't notice it much. He has his own backup generator. Jason Wells is the CEO for CenterPoint Energy. On October 26th of last year, it was announced that there was a leadership change there in CenterPoint Energy. He took over the job from David J. Lesser, and according to research advocacy nonprofit group called As You Sow, released a study identifying the top 100 overpaid CEOs in the country. According to As You Sow's analysis, CenterPoint CEO David J. Lester made $37,809,810. Can you believe that? That made him that year the 12th most overpaid U.S. chief executive. And that was published February 19th of last year. So I imagine Mr. Wells is probably making close to the same amount. But another thing I found out about the new CEO, Mr. Wells, is that his previous position of many jobs that he had before joining CenterPoint Energy in 2020, he held a position with California PG&E Corporation for 13 years. He served as Executive Vice President and CFO, overseeing the financial activities of nearly $60 billion enterprise. In his roles as Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Wells successfully led the execution of more than $500 billion in capital market and strategic transactions. And you guys know about the mess that PG&E has gone through in the past. So my first thought was when I was reading about the seldom used generators and the $800 million that was spent that would power whole blocks at one time. I thought, well, that's a good thing, because if there's a nationwide power outage, such as war or EMP or maybe a nuclear blast in the air, at least Houston would be prepared for that. So in the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl, CenterPoint never deployed the 30 megawatt units. These larger generators, most of which have the capacity of about 30 megawatts, enough to power entire neighborhoods. But they were never deployed. I don't know why. Maybe they had too much major infrastructure damage, but they came to realize that they needed the smaller ones. Those that had the capacity of around 1 megawatt or even just half a megawatt, usually enough to power up facilities like nursing homes, fire stations, and cooling centers. CenterPoint only had 18 of the smaller generators, and they end up borrowing dozens more from neighboring utility providers. There was also nonprofit groups that also came in and brought their own smaller power generators. The mega generators evidently were purchased in 2021, and when CenterPoint first asked regulators the following year in 2022 for permission to recoup the cost of the larger generators from the consumers, protests were fierce. Houston area officials, trade groups, and consumer advocates argued that the larger units are too big to move around quickly and aren't appropriate for critical facilities that tend to lose electricity after big storms. But the PUC agreed with CenterPoint, allowing it to pass on the whole cost of the investment into ratepayers. and it even earned a 6.5% profit. That was when CenterPoint CEO David J. Lesser was still in charge of everything. Well, there was a meeting on Thursday where commissioners appeared to take the concerns more seriously. They were asked, what are you doing to optimize the use of the existing mobile generation units? Said Commissioner Lori Cobos. She added that the PUC had approved of the original investment based on the notion that, CenterPoint in a hurricane-prone area, and these units would help for the restoration of power. If they're too big, she continued, get smaller ones. Make sure you have the right size to address the critical care facilities. Doug Lewin, a Texas energy analysis and publisher of the Texas Energy and Power newsletter, said the discussion shows that CenterPoint never should have acquired the larger generators in the first place. The company is supposed to be focused on transmission, not generation of electricity, he pointed out. Well, if, like I said, there was a major disaster across the country where you needed to generate power, those would be good. But that's only if the transmission lines are still up and capable of transmitting the power that the generators would produce. Makes me wonder what the CEO, those on the board, were planning for back in 2021. Maybe it was because of the winter storm Uri in 2021 that made them think about this. I don't know. CenterPoint and other utility providers are not allowed to be involved in generating electricity. But that changed after Winter Storm Uri killed more than 200 people in February of 2021. State law now allows CenterPoint and its peers to rent generators for the use during certain emergencies. But only CenterPoint chose to go big, leasing a whopping 500 megawatts of power generations for $800 million. Well, they overpaid just like they overpaid their CEOs. So they don't even own the megawatt generators, they're leasing them. Critics said CenterPoint couldn't justify its astronomical investment, and that it also made misleading claims about the generator's usefulness. The company repeatedly called them mobile in news releases, even to regulatory filings and memos to investors, even though 15 of the 20 units are so big it takes days to secure a permit required to move them. Earlier this month, the company acknowledged that those units are not for rapid response use and that they are not designed to be mobile. It also walked back previous statements which it made in multiple public filings that the big generators would be useful after storms knocked out power lines and other parts of the transmission system. They would be useless, in my opinion. They went on to say that the biggest generators would probably only help when high electricity demand forces rolling blackouts. They could not provide electricity following hurricanes or other storms like derechos in May. As for the smaller generator units, Wells, the current CEO, said he did not know exactly how much money those would ultimately cost consumers, and that the company has not responded to written requests for that information. Sandra Havilat, president of the Texas Consumer Association, said it would be cheaper and more efficient for nursing homes and other facilities to install their own backup generators rather than to rely on CenterPoint to transport backup power on tractor trailers after every big storm. Plus, she pointed out that CenterPoint gets to charge customers not just to deploy the generators during the storm, but also to acquire them and store them in between extreme weather events, and the company gets to collect a profit on the investment. Yeah, so who did they lease these mega power generators from? Are we going to find out later that CenterPoint is in cahoots with that company in some form? Are they planning for something big to come in the future? Or is it only about greed? What are your thoughts? Put your comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. Please let me know what you think about this. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you later. God bless you. Bye.